just happened to that. Okay, so the last bit of content we're talking about today is workers' compensation. And it is in, I thought I just had it up, section 4 in the Montana part of Moodle. Where it just went, I don't know, but we'll find it again. So first thing I'd like to tell you about workers' comp is that it's a mandatory insurance policy. So, and it's pretty uniform between all 50 states. So you can choose where you want to get it. In other words, you don't have to get it from the state. You can get it from your private insurance carrier. But it's called statutory benefits. In other words, they're the same regardless of where you get them. So the pricing may be different, but the actual policy is going to be the same. Here we go. There's 3 parties. Can you hit the lights, Daniel, for me, please? There's 3 parties to workers' comp. So the employer, the actual state fund, and the injured worker. The employer obviously is the one that pays the premiums. The state fund is the group for most people who provide the insurance, but like I just said earlier, you can actually get it through a private carrier. And then obviously you're not in the system unless you're an injured worker. Most people think of state fund as only being an insurance provider, but they actually do a whole bunch more than that. They've got a safety and loss control division that goes out to companies and helps them become safer work environments and control their losses. Obviously, they have a claims administration that processes all the insurance claims. They have a fraud detection division that will, if they suspect that somebody's abusing workers' comp, I mean, they've got ways of, I mean, it's not really espionage, but of, you know, they actually will go out into the field with cameras and see, like, if you said you've got a herniated disc and they catch you, you know, skiing, you know, it's a fraud detection field workers that go out into the field and try and preclude people from claiming if they're not really injured. They have an early reporting division, which encourages, obviously just what it says, early reporting. If you feel like, oh gosh, I've tweaked my back, they don't want you to wait until you've herniated the disc. They want to get you in there and get soft tissue care. And then Managed Care Network is the group of physical therapists and doctors and physician's assistants, etc., that work with the injured worker. And what does the injured worker get? He or she gets disability benefits, medical benefits, and vocational rehabilitation, and we call that generally for short voc rehab. And the goal of all this, obviously, is to get the injured worker back to work. So it's mandatory no-fault insurance, and those are all really important words. Again, mandatory, you can't opt out. No fault means that there's none of the premiums or none of the policy risk pool goes to lawsuits or litigation efforts. It's basically, it's what's called an exclusive remedy. In other words, the employer provides workers' comp to the employee, so the employee, unless they can prove criminal negligence, can't sue the employer for their injury. They have to go through this system called workers' comp, right? So in other words, my only remedy or my exclusive way I can take care of my workplace injury is through workers' comp. I can't go outside of that system. And what do I get as an employee? Again, compensation for lost wages, although you do have to be out of work for 48 straight hours before your wage loss kicks in. So for a lot of people, that alone is tough, 6 days of missed wages. And the medical and there's death benefits and rehab benefits. So the basic trade-off is the employers give insurance, they get freedom from lawsuits. Okay? The employees give up the ability to sue their employer, and they get, and this is workers' comp language, speedy access to medical treatment. Well, anybody I know that's been in the workers' comp system, they don't use the word speedy, but this is these are their documents that I've scanned. Okay, who's covered? Basically, everybody, full-time, part-time, seasonal, folks that are authorized from other countries to work here. There's no age limit, or if you're 15 and working at, Wendy's, you're covered just as well as anybody else. And the employer pays for it. In no way, shape, or form can an employer ever require an employee to pay any or all part of the premiums, nor can they offer an employee money to get their medical claims taken care of and not go through workers' comp. And that happens all the time. So say that you guys are all day laborers for me on a construction site, and you sweep up and you move rock and you take old shingles away, whatever. And one of you gets hurt. So already I'm in a really high risk pool because construction by nature is high risk, and there's generally it's a high injury class. So I go up to you and I go, I'm really sorry, Cole, that you dropped a concrete piling and broke your foot. Here's $1,000. I'm the super on the job. I pull out my wallet. I give you $1,000. Go take care of your foot. You don't need to show up for the next week, and we'll pay you, but don't go through workers' comp, okay? Because it's going to raise my rates for everybody, potentially, depending upon my claims history, okay? So he can take it, but then he should still go through workers' comp. So, actually, he shouldn't take it. But my point is you can't, it's illegal to require or to ask somebody to take money and then circumvent the workers' comp system. No substitute insurance. So there's 3 ways to get covered. You can self-insure, which I'll talk about that in a second, like if you're a really, like the University of Montana self-insures. If you're a really large organization, you've got a pretty good safety record, rather than pay premiums every month, you put money calculated actuarially into a fund, and then as people claim, you pay them directly, so you don't go through any formal system at all. There's not very many that qualify to do that. Or you can go to your private insurance, where I get my car insurance or my business liability or whatever, and ask them to write a policy, and they certainly can bid on it. Or you can go to State Fund, which is in Helena and is the kind of fallback organization for many, many companies. But I was trying to explain earlier, benefits are statutory. Statutory means they're required by statute or law. So if you go get an insurance or workers' comp policy from Payne West or Western Montana or State Fund, they've got to provide the exact same benefits for your people. So you're not, if you go get car insurance, it's like, do you want $1,000 deductible or $500 deductible or, blah, blah, blah. That's not how workers' comp works. It's all exactly the same. Costs may vary, obviously, and it's a residual market, meaning that if you can't self-insure and you can't get private insurance, State Fund has to cover you, because obviously if you've got to have workers' comp to operate in Montana, you've got to have somebody that'll provide you the insurance. The problem is the cost can be really exorbitant. I've worked with a number of organizations. The one that's the most kind of illustrates this the most was a log liner, which is a very high risk occupation. Anyways, it's folks that go in right after spring breakup and start pulling dead wood out of the forest. And they're in big rig, a lot of mud, a lot of ice. And I was doing some consulting for a guy that had one of these companies, small company, probably 5-6 trucks. But he just could not embrace the idea of having solid safety policies. And so, just basic stuff like work boots and hard hats and, and so they had really high claims, and their workers' comp went up to 60 cents on the dollar. Okay, so for every dollar he paid his log liners, he had to pay 60 cents to State Fund to cover him. So at some point it becomes, I was like, you can't, there's nothing you can do to make a profit with this kind of overhead, So you've got to get your safety policies in order and your protocols updated. But you have to pay the coverage. So the only time that State Fund doesn't have to cover you is if you are in default of your premiums. So which he chronically was, because the payments were so high, and then we have to have these audits, and finally I just recused myself. I said, oh, it's too much of a pain. Okay, self-insurance. So you apply to the State Fund, and you have to, second bullet, provide evidence of financial solvency. In other words, if I'm going to self-insure, they have to feel confident that if one of y'all get hurt on the job, that I've actually got the money to pay your medical bills, pay your lost wages, retrain you, if needed, and do everything that you would get, all the privileges and benefits you would have if you went through a formal insurance company. You've got to have at least 50 employees, be in business at least 3 years, and post a $250,000 security deposit. And I don't know. I think community hospital or medical centers, self-insured. University of Montana is, Louisiana Pacific is. There's a number of kind of big employers in Missoula, but it's pretty rare. Plan 2, private carriers. Again, you just call up your regular old insurance carrier, and they're profit oriented, so of course their costs may vary from State Fund. State Fund is a government agency, so it's not profit driven. And get a quote from them and see if you like, really all you're looking at is pricing, because the benefits are identical. And then lastly, you can apply to state comp. They only sell Montana workers' comp, and they can't deny coverage. So one of the things that State Fund does is a lot of folks, honestly, don't know all the requirements of what they have set up when they become an employer. Or like, say you've had like a little, ski tuning shop forever, and all of a sudden you bring on a couple employees, and you may not know, like, oh my gosh, I've got to pay SUTA, I've got to pay workers' comp, I've got to, issue W-2s, I've got to do all these quarterly reports. A lot of people honestly don't know. So there's a whole section of workers' comp that goes around to find uninsured employers. So they do things like look at new business license applications, or they actually drive around town and look for turnover in strip malls and new shops going up. And then they locate you, and they say, well, I see that you haven't put in a workers' comp application. And they give you not very long, it's like 48 or 72 hours to do it. And if you don't, it is pretty fast. They move way faster, for example, than taxing authorities. They'll come in, they'll issue a cease and desist, and they'll lockbox your facility, and they'll yellow tape your facility, and you're just shut down until you get workers' comp. And prosecute. And I've actually seen that happen. It's a pretty big deal. If you get audited by workers' comp, which actually there's a higher propensity of getting audited by a state comp in Montana than there is the Department of Revenue for income taxes, and you get penalized, again, very short time period to kind of get even with them, or they're going to lockbox you and cease and desist. It's nothing to fool around with. Okay, I'm not going to go through all these, but I want you to look at them. Just a series of questions. How long do I have to be off before I get my benefits? Does my employer have access to my medical records? Do I get a choice of physician? These are just all, it's a basic Q&A of workers' comp questions. Fraud and abuse hotline. If you think somebody's defrauding workers' comp, here's your number. This, I'm sure if you've ever had a job, you've seen this posting. This is something that's got to be in your break room or by your clock or something, that tells the employee, here's your rights under workers' comp. Okay, so what happens if you get hurt on the job? Every organization has got to have somebody that's a first reporter. So if you get injured, you're not just running around going, who does workers' comp, right? You've got somebody in the organization that's designated as the person that compiles anything that might happen. I mean, we all know who our person is here, so if anything were to happen, you go to her, and she coordinates you getting your first reporting form submitted. So this is a little bit old, but it's all a digital process now. But the point being is that you want to get, and again, if you've done anything that you think maybe you got hurt on the job, even if it's not, not stopping you from doing your job. So, I do something and I tweak my knee and I'm like, oh gosh, I know I did that. Just right now at work, you want to file a first reporting form, because if you go skiing next weekend and then you're like, oh, shit, I really hurt my knee at work, you didn't report it directly related to the job. Because you took some crazy mogul runs this weekend. So you have to be really cognizant and advocate on behalf of yourself. The employer's not going to encourage you to do that because he or she doesn't want workers' comp claims on their fund. But I'm just kind of telling you for your own personal knowledge to advocate on behalf of yourself if any of you ever feel like you're injured at work. When I was the CFO at a biotech firm years ago in Colorado, we had chemists and microbiologists, and we were doing original research and development in our labs, and then manufacturing and selling the product in a contract environment. Anyways, one of the microbiologists, just like a beaker broke, and she got just a little tiny glass sliver in her fingertip. And I was the first reporter coordinator there, and she came and said, oh, and I just got this little shard, and it's not any big deal. And I'm like, no, I think we should get you entered in the system and get a claim number. Well, it ended up, I can't remember the name of the substance that was in the beaker, but she ended up getting blood sepsis, which is, an infection in her bloodstream, and it manifests itself in her vital organs. So it was pretty important that we got her logged in. Who would have thought like a little glass shard in your finger could result in, systemic damage? So I just can't emphasize that enough. That's a real life story. It was really terrifying. So you get a claim number and then you start into the system. Remember, the objective is to report the claim quickly. So very, very important. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about, which is kind of I want you to know all this, obviously, about the whole system, but the crux of as accountants, what you will do is really three things. Accountants are managers. You have to know how to apply for workers' comp. You have to know how to fill out the reports. Just like everything we do in here, you've got some sort of reporting mechanism where you get, reconcile what you were supposed to pay with what you paid. And then the third thing is managing your business to keep your workers' comp claims low. So first thing to know is how to apply for it. And again, this is now assuming that you're going through state fund, not through a private insurer, or not self-insured. So you, actually, let me show you. It's completely opposite of everything else we've done. Everything else that we've done with payroll taxes, we've, here's a timeline. So say I'm opening, my business yesterday. And that's a fiscal year. If with payroll taxes, you go down the road, when's the first time that I'm going to have to file any sort of payroll tax return if I open my doors on May 1st and start paying on May 1st? Okay, good question. So you're talking about deposits. So I might have to deposit. I'm saying, when's my first reporting requirements? Yeah, it is. It's July 31st. So 6/1/7/1. What's due on 7/30? And by the way, these are the kinds of questions that'll be on the final. It's this big sort of, did you get the gist of the class? What do you have to file on July 30th? John, what's one thing you gotta file? 941. Kelsey, what else do you have to file? That's annual. Need to do your SUTA report, right? You need to check to see, not to file the actual 940 Kels, but to do, oh, doesn't look like a word, does it? I think that's called a UI5 or something. You've got to check to see if you need to make a 940 deposit, right? And as Spencer said, depending upon whether you're a monthly or an accelerated payer, you're going to have to be, potentially making deposits in here, right, for 941. Okay. So the way payroll taxes work is, something happens and then you report in arrears, okay, at the end of the process, right? It's totally opposite in workers' comp. In workers' comp, you get rid of all these little green guys. You estimate into the future what you think you're going to pay people. You estimate and pay up front, and then you get to the back end down here, and you do a report, and reconcile or get even with state comp. So, and I'll give you concrete examples of this. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm starting, I've got 2 people that I'm going to bring into my little shop where I tune up your skis and your snowboards and your skateboards, what have you. What are those new boards that are like hovercrafty things? Hoverboards, yeah, I saw those. Whoa. They probably don't need tuning because they don't really have bearings, but anyways. So I hire 2 people and I say I'm going to hire them for 25 hours a week. I'm going to pay them each $15 an hour. I do the math on that, and I estimate what I think my wages are going to be for my 2 folks for the next year. I put that on my application, and I'm going to walk through this in a little bit more detail in a second, but just stick with me here. I put it on the application. They come back and say, oh, we're going to categorize them as class code whatever, depending upon how high risk the job is. So say one of the guys just tunes up in my shop, probably pretty low risk, but the other lady actually goes up to the mountain. So that's higher risk. She's got to drive up to the mountain. She maybe does some demo skis with people. So she's going to be in a different class code. I'm going to have to pay more for a higher percentage on every dollar I pay her because she's got a higher propensity of getting injured. So they do all the math and they tell me, okay, you owe, $1,923 based on the data you estimated. So I pay that now, right? And then I get out there a year later and I'm getting ready to do my report. And what I estimated for wages isn't what happened at all. My business took off, I hired 5 people. And I couldn't get them for $15 an hour, I had to pay them $17.50. So everything that I thought was, but then I only worked them 20 hours a week or whatever, you get my point. Nothing's ever what you think it's going to be, right? So you get out here and then they do the math on what actually happened. So out here, you look at the actual. And then they do the math on it and it's like, wow, it wasn't $1,923 at all. You should have paid $3,721. So now I obviously owe them the difference for the prior year, and then it starts all over again where I estimate the next year. So you're always getting even for the past year and then prepaying for the future. Based now on the information, oh, I really need 5 people. So, a little bit more detail then on how the actual numbers work. Do you understand the process? So let's say I do something. So we have a business incubator here in Missoula called Montech. Has anybody heard of it? Do you know what a business incubator is? A business incubator is where you have a core set of services like iTech and finance and marketing, and then if you're a small, a young entrepreneur, I don't mean young in age, but a new entrepreneur, and you have an idea for a product, you go to a business incubator, and you've got all the services you need. You've got a CFO, you've got an iTech person, you've got a marketing crew, and they help take your seedling ideas and grow it into a full-fledged business. And ours is basically a university incubator. It's called Montech, and it's out actually right before the new Missoula College on the right. Anyway, so there's right now there's a pretty interesting young company there. They're doing an app for young mothers in conjunction with a national newsletter that was also started in Missoula called Mama Load. Has anybody heard of that? Have you heard of Mama Load? Okay. Yeah, Elkies. Yeah. So she started a little magazine for new mothers in Missoula, and it's gone huge. I mean, she's got a clothing line, she's got a newsletter, she's got a blog. I mean, it's in all 50 states, and now they're incubating an app to help moms with planning and executing being a mother, I guess. So she and it's a spin-off. It's not part of an existing company, so you have to apply for workers' comp separately. So she estimates, this is on the application. She estimates that she's going to need 3 people to code, right? Write code on the app and do the development and do the patent work and all the things that go into developing an app. And she thinks she's going to have 3 coders at, gosh, I don't even know what they make in Missoula. Let's say $43,000 each. And then she's going to need 2 people that are going to take it to the trade shows, take it out on the road, go talk to the folks that are in the young mother demographics. And so she's going to have 2 sales and marketing people. And they're going to work, maybe at $30,000 each. And then she's going to hire, let's say she's going to have a half of a time iTech person, support person. And so at halftime, that person's going to make $25,000. Okay, so that's what she puts on her application. So what comes back from workers' comp, from state fund, is numbers that you use to calculate your premiums. And they give you those numbers based on something called a class code. So state fund assigns class codes, which results in premiums. And it's based on your description of what these people do. So these guys, if you've ever been anywhere where coders are, there's really not a whole lot they can do to get injured on the job, except for a computer. So they're going to have a really low rated class code. So they get rated at 1.17. Sales and marketing people by nature doesn't sound too terribly dangerous, but anytime you travel, you're going to be in a higher class code because you're in a car, you're on a plane, you're traveling. That just increases your level of risk. 6.22. And again, your iTech person, super low risk. Although, probably like the carpal tunnel and ulnar tunnel and stuff like that. So, but probably about where your coder is, maybe a little higher. Just making up numbers here. So they send you this. What those numbers mean is that's the number that you apply for every $100 of wages. this number, so you have to figure out how much do they make per class code, divide it by 100 and multiply it by this number. So figure out what my premiums are for the upcoming year. Does everyone understand the math? You got to figure out per class code how much they're going to make, divide that by 100, and then multiply it by the number that workers' comp gave you. Change, doesn't it? So this is what this guy or gal makes. This isn't the half-time salary. So if they were full-time, it'd be 50. Did I make that clear? And just so I write workers' comp a check for these three numbers, 5743.80. Do I have a second on that? That's what you got? Okay, cool. So I send them a check. Which right away you should probably already be going like, oh my goodness, small new business person, that's a chunk of change to come up with, right? Out of the chute before you've ever sold anything. So I send him that check, and I get to the end of the year, and as you can imagine, this isn't what happens at all. Okay? One of the coders quits. The other one, I don't know, gets pregnant or decides she only wants to work half-time. Go ahead.
Can you go through one of them?
Sure. Oh, of course. So this one's, there's three coders at 45,000, right? So 3 times 43,000. So I'm paying my coders 129 grand, right? Divided by 100 times 1.17, 1509.30. Really, also, to be honest, it's just they give you these numbers, which is, they're also just a percent, aren't they? That's what dividing by 100 and multiplying by that number is. But on the form, it says divide by 100 and multiply by the form. So don't let that confuse you if it does.
So those are percents, so it's...
They really are percents. When I tell you to divide by 100 and multiply by this, that's the same thing, isn't it? I'm telling you to move the decimal place 2 to the left. But I'm just saying on the form, I shouldn't have said that. On the form, it says divide by 100 and multiply by this number, which is a percent. So I send him the check, and that isn't what happens at all. Now at the end of the year, let's just go back up here and look at our little timeline. Now we can put in the real numbers. What was it again? 57. Thank So then at the end of the year, they send me it's called a payroll report. And on the payroll report, I put down how much they actually made, what actually happened. And here's what actually happened. My coders in total my coders in total, I'm just going to put this in black, made $102,500. And my sales and marketing, one ended up being sufficient, the other one was horrible, so I bumped up the current person, so that was $41,000, and I needed way more iTech support than I thought. So those are the actual numbers. So then tell me what happened at the end of the year, who got even with who? These are my actual wages now at the end of the year. So what happened here? Who got even with who and by how much? So I'm going to have a credit on my next year's bill of $1190.35. Okay, did anybody else get that $1190.35? Good. So my actual amount I should have paid on the coders the actual wages were 102.5 times 1.17%. So my actual amount I should have paid on them was $1199.25. And then my sales and marketing people, 41,000 at 6.22. I should have paid 2550.20. And my iTech person, 40 grand rather than 25. Actual workers' comp for that person was 804. So I deposited more than my actual bill was, right? So going into the next year, they're going to take the difference between these two numbers and credit me 1190.35. Right? And then I'm going to estimate what I'm going to pay him the next year, and I'm going to subtract that credit, and it's going to just keep doing that year after year after year. If you're really giant, it's actually going to happen on a quarterly basis, but for our purposes in here, we'll just treat it as an annual event. Does that make sense? Smiling and nodding, yep. I don't, nobody is. I'm like, are you guys okay? Is everybody just ready for the sun to shine and school to be out, or it's like, okay. Yeah, I was a little bit on vacation land. It was not my easiest thing to do to roll back in and push through these last 2 weeks either. Okay, so do you need me to do another example, or do you understand? Yes or no?
Okay, so when you,
Because I can tell you there'll be probably a good 15-point problem like this on the exam.
when you multiply those new numbers, you add them,
Sure.
and then you take that minus the division.
Yep. So, but it's not so much important that you understand, well, it isn't important you understand the process, but do you understand what happened?
Yeah, they were over,
These were your estimates. So I have to write a check based upon what I think is going to happen because I'm way back here starting. Then I get to the end of the year and then I can pull my reports. I know what I paid people. And it wasn't what I thought. It was 102 and 41 and 40. So when I multiply by these same numbers, they can't change the class code on me or anything unless the person actually changes. You know, then it was these three numbers.
So they just want something up front.
They
Something
want it,
from your
absolutely.
business, and then they'll settle it out at the end when you got all
Absolutely.
the figures.
That's really all it is, but it's not, we don't do anything else like that, so it's kind of
It's
confusing.
in arrears.
Yeah, it's in arrears,
It's
yeah.
like property taxes.
It's exactly like property tax.
Does this change much when you do have to go file a claim and then affect your estimates and credit?
It will in the next year.
Okay.
It will in the next year, or the next quarter if you're giant. Which is why you often will see employers actually illegally saying, oh, Katie, your elbow doesn't really hurt. Or something, you're like, oh, yeah.
Do those rates carry over from one business to another if you resell businesses or?
That's a really good question. Yes, because it's not like SUDA where it goes with the business, it goes by the class code. So the assumption being that a coder in your company is as high of a risk.
They
In my
gotta tell you what
Now,
what the class is.
The one thing that I'm not really explaining, which makes this a whole bunch more complicated, which would answer your question, the class codes are universal, but then you also, each individual business has a factor applied to it. You're a really safe company, so once we figure your premiums based on class codes, we're only gonna charge you 92% of it. Or, you're really a high-risk company, so we're gonna go through all these class, calculations, but you're gonna pay.
But if I had a disastrous episode that hurt a huge amount of people.
That's what's
my
gonna,
rates,
yes.
could I then close the business and restart it again and it would be a lower rate?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's really dumping your rate, and that's certainly illegal for SUDA. I can't imagine you can do it here. I think this premium's gonna follow you. I would imagine. I honestly don't know the answer to that. Okay, does everyone understand this?
So that number, the 1100,
Yeah.
is a credit to next year?
Yes. So then next year, you're like, you do it all over again, you estimate, and it's like, oh, I should be in $6,000, but I get to subtract 1190.35. We're not, this part that I just tacked on down here, I'm not actually requiring you to do those calculations. But that is a piece of it that takes a standard class code assignment and alters it based upon how dangerous is your workplace. So, where did this, where does that keep going? Huh. Sorry, I don't know what keeps happening to the actual section. It should be on an Adobe file, but I don't see that down here. Oh, it's behind it. Never mind. Oh, gotcha. Okay. So this is one of the things that you will need to be doing for this assignment. You're going to apply for workers' comp. Here's what the application looks like. I'm not going to go line by line. It's pretty much like all the other stuff we filled out. Just read the instructions. I'm going to show you the things that I think are most important, or the things that can stop people up. Okay, this in here is the most important part, down on the bottom of page 1. You do not do any of these first 4 columns. That's what the state does. State, location, class code, description code, that's how they come up with those numbers. So you don't do those first 4 left columns. And it says shaded area completed by MSF. You describe the employee's duties. Coder, farmer, salesperson, semi-driver. You tell them in your number that you're estimating how many are full-time and how many are part-time. And then you just give them one number. So like with the coders example we just did, whatever 43 times 3 is, that's the number that would go in there. You would have said 129,000. So I would have said coder, 2 full-time, 0 part-time, 129,000.
Just combine them all together.
Combine them all together. But make sure that every single job category is separately listed. Right? So, like if you're on a big construction job, the guy that puts up the scaffolding is not the same as the gal that paints. Now you're going to have scaffolder, or is that a name? Scaffold builder and painter.
Does the owner go in there?
The owner goes in there if what? Really good question. Yeah, well, but what can I do as an owner? Do I have to cover myself?
Not if he's applied for the exemption.
If he's got an IC exemption, then he's not going to be in there. Klaus just asked a very good question. Did everybody catch that? The owner can choose to exempt him or herself if they want by filing what we just practiced, an IC exemption. So you need to be astute to that.
What do you do if an employee does more than one job that has a classification?
So that, yeah, that's a really good question too. Yeah, this gets a lot trickier than it looks. So say you shovel my walks and are my financial products assistant and, pitch in the corporate daycare 2 hours a day, right? So you do a lot of things, which is super typical in Montana. You would have 3 things here: daycare provider, groundskeeper, and financial products assistant. And then in the little part-time box, I would put, 0.5, 0.3, and 0.2, right, to show the allocation of the job. Yeah, because obviously somebody that works around little kids or on facilities is going to be rated at a way higher class code than somebody that's, sitting in front of a computer bidding out annuities all day. Okay, then the next section is ownership information, and this is kind of hard. It's pretty faint up here, but you'll have it in front of you. And this is where you put the names of your officers and your owners and your shareholders if you're an S Corp, and you tell me one by one if they're covered. Okay, name. Lisa Swallow, title, president, ownership 100%, duties performed, manager. Included or excluded, that's if I chose to exempt myself or not. If I'm included, then I'm in. And my number was up in those estimates in the prior section. If I'm excluded, that means that I filed and been accepted for an IC exemption.
Do we know the class code?
You don't know the class code. They tell you the class code. Prior carrier and loss history mandatory. So this is if you're like switching over to state fund and you've been with Payne West or something. Description of business operations. Be very careful to be as explicit as you can. Let me give you examples here. And then there's like 2 pages of lots of little check in the boxes. And I can just tell you in this little example I'm giving you to do for our last case study, there's not going to be anything weird in here that you have to worry about. But in the real world, you live number 13, do your employees travel out of state? That's going to put you in a higher class code. Is there any volunteer or donated labor? Do any people work predominantly at home? You know, I mean, they're trying to rate you accurately by having you answer all these questions. Here's your question, John. Did you acquire the business from another owner?
People who work for you for free and not payroll have to be covered as well.
They do. They do. There's certain weird exceptions, like if you're a coach for high school, or not a coach, a rep for high school sports. That seems to me like a pretty high risk thing to be doing, like sitting out on a football field, you know? Like say if you're me with a bunch of seniors in high school, but it's, you know, that's specifically exempted as a volunteer gig. But like students that we have coming here that volunteer, that's a good example who volunteers here. When you guys go out on internships, if they're unpaid, that's volunteer labor, but if you were to get hurt at the job, and again, it doesn't really pertain to people in my field, but like welding or something, you've got to be covered by the company that you're out doing your internship on.
Volunteer firemen?
Covered.
But since they're not paid, what's the effect of multiplying by to get the amount that's due?
If you do this, you're gonna get an ancillary form that's gonna say, how many hours do they work? How experienced are they? What would be the fair market value if you were hiring them? And then they're gonna extrapolate a number. Good questions. Yeah, because wouldn't that suck to go out like on your internship and get hurt and be like, oh, sorry, not covered. And then you sign it and you send it in. Then they send you back something, so that's step one, apply. Step two, they send you the class codes, the premiums, and something called a binder. So like say I'm in the construction trades and I start my business on May 1st, I'm going to fax my application, they're going to fax me back a binder because I'm going to go bid on a job tomorrow. I'm not going to get on any job site without showing that my folks are covered. Right? So I need a binder. And then at the end of the year, you get the report, the payroll report, and that's where you put the actual. So here, they've sent you the payroll report, and now everything's pre-printed. Your class codes, the descriptions of your people, right? They got all that from the application. All you do, literally, is fill in their actual gross, except for you don't include overtime premiums. So you can't. This was a lesson really hard learned for me. The first company I ever worked for was this biotech firm as their CFO, and I filled out my first workers' comp reports. I just went to my general ledger. I pulled my payroll reports. I did some manual, calculations, who fits in what code. Here's my microbiologist. Here's my chemist. Here's my sales and marketing people. And then we got an audit because we were a new company. And they came out, holy audit. My first audit, I was terrified. They come out of the audit, they're like, you have a $3,000 refund. I'm like, you do? That wasn't bad news to take to my boss, but I'm like, why? Because I had just pulled the gross number from the payroll reports, but there was overtime in there. So, the last thing I need to tell you about all this is, say with these people, I can't remember the numbers, but let's just take the one category. If these coders, well, what's the first question whether someone's got overtime or not? You have to ask, are they
Subject to those provisions.
right? What do we call that? Are you an exempt employee? Okay. Should probably go back and review that. They'll absolutely be on the exam as well. That's a really critical thing. Exempt versus exempt. So the first question to ask are your coders exempt or non-exempt? If they're exempt, it's not an issue because you don't pay overtime, right? But they're non-exempt. For anybody that works in this world, you know that coders don't work 40 hours a week. Okay? So I have to go in there. I don't pull out all of their overtime. I just back out the premium. In other words, the 0.5. So I've got to pay workers' comp on all the hours they work, their hourly rate, but not the 0.5 that they get for everything over 40.
That's a mistake you made.
That's, yeah, I just went to my GL and pulled the gross numbers, and I mean, I had no idea, you know? So, yeah, not a mistake made twice. It was a good mistake to make, because at least it's in that way where you can tell your boss, we're getting an audit, you're getting money back. We're getting an audit and they screwed up and you gotta write a big check. But, what was I gonna say? It's a non-issue if you've got all exempt people. Okay? And I think, what is this last little document here? Oh, this is, they published this a couple years ago. You should look through this and highlight what you think is important. This is now, everything basically that I just told you is obviously all digitized and it's all streamed. Yeah, just like your payroll taxes, you set up an electronic funds transfer with state fund. And you file your reports electronically, and this is just telling you how to do all that. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so for your last assignment, we've got 20 minutes to work on it now. I would encourage you to stay so you can ask me questions if you need to. And I will give you back your audit test. Our final is, correct me if I'm wrong, Thursday, 1:10 to 3:10? Is that right? In here. It's open everything. I know I've said this before. Your biggest problem on this test will be you run out of time because you look everything up. Do not do that. It's a pretty long test. I write the points by every single question. This is a 1-point question. You gonna spend 20 minutes trying to get a point? No. Okay? The only thing I will not accept, I will tell if you go Google something, what's a UI5? And I just won't give you the points because my dog could be trained to do that. Okay? Very smart. So don't just go pull things from the internet. That doesn't work. You've got to find it or know it and put it in your words. Also, by the way, that's plagiarism. Okay, where am I? Here's our assignments. So it's using some of the core data from number 2. So we're still working on Wilmo Company. So I just handed back number 2, right? Oh, right. This way's fickle. I am going to try and get this off of my cloud account rather than the, I don't know if that'll matter. Oh, don't forget to put your, pass your assignment 3, please, in to the center desk here. Okay, so why don't you take a read on this, see if you have any questions, and I will be happy to answer those. Do we need to meet on Thursday, or do you want to just put the assignment outside my box by Thursday? There's not really, I mean, I could do a review if you came and asked me questions. I mean, I don't know how I would review 15 weeks.
So it's target.
Yeah, like if I mean, I'm happy to come. I mean, you paid for my time to come say, you know, let's practice doing a a piece rate and then taking out taxes? Or could we do another one of those where, I had a 401k? I mean, I'm happy to do that. Do you wanna do that? But I'm not gonna prepare anything. You would need to come ask me, I started to study and I need to work on this. Yay or nay? How many people wanna do that? Nobody wants to do that. Okay. And I will come, I will see you on Thursday. If you choose not to be here, that's fine. Make sure you get assignment 4 to me. Okay? And you paid for my time, so come make me work. Okay?
Are you making a study guide?
I'm not making a study guide. That's what I'm saying, like 15 weeks, I can guarantee you guys on the final exam that about 60% of it's from Montana. 60 to 65% of it's from the Montana sections, because we haven't tested on that. So if I were studying for the exam, I would make really sure that I know what's in those 4 sections. It's really about organizing the materials. The rest of the stuff, the other 35% that's comprehensive, I am not gonna go back and ask you some weird little something on page 216. Rereading the chapters is a waste of your time. Re-looking at your federal homework, waste of your time. Going back to the PowerPoints and reworking some of the big calculations, like do I know how to find FIP? Do I know how to do a 401k? Do I know how to gross up a payroll and make a deposit? That would be a really good use of your time. I'm gonna ask you big stuff that pulls everything together. Like run a payroll, do a 940. Make a deposit for these 3 people.
So are you gonna be able to use Excel?
Sure, you can use anything you want, but I will not accept an answer if I can tell it's been copied and pasted from the internet. And you can't use each other. But you can use anything else. Most people will come in, they'll have their PowerPoints accessible. But again, it can't be like, what chapter did we do fit in? And then you're scrolling through 63 slides. You're gonna have your book open because you're gonna need your tax tables. You're definitely gonna want easy access to your sections of Montana because that's what 2/3 of the test is gonna be on.
What do you question?
Boy. 50? 60? 2 hours. You'll use all the whole 2 hours. You'll see, there's for sure going to be a case study on independent contractor versus employees. There's for sure going to be a case study on exempt versus non-exempt. And those are huge issues. We talked about them all semester. I can guarantee you might not have to do a full tax return, but you'll have to do all the prep like you were going to do a 941 or a 940. And then the other big stuff. One more time. I don't think that I have you actually go all the way to the tax return, but you have to do all the calculations that would be ready to just plunk into it. I've tried to create the test to assess, could you get out of here and run a payroll? Is basically what it's based on. And then I'll get it posted as fast as I can. That's if we get out of here Thursday at 3:10. I will try and I will have the grades in Moodle. Well, graduation's Saturday, isn't it? Yeah, I'll just stay. I'll have them in there probably by Friday, late Friday afternoon. And then I would really appreciate if everybody doesn't email me and go, what'd I get? Okay, this is an accounting class. You take all the points that you could have got, that's the denominator. And all the points you did get, that's the numerator. And then the percentage that comes out goes right to the syllabus. And you can tell what you got. Okay. Did you want to look at this? Did you read that? Do you have a chance? Let me give you a couple minutes and we'll talk about it. Okay. Your audit test back, but I need them because I haven't recorded them yet. Thanks. Great.
And then, I didn't see grades for.
Okay, see, that's good to know. We have those.
pull from assignment two, the total wages for the,
Yeah, let me take a look here.
basically on the W2,
Uh,
and I assume those got any overtime?
Okay, using the salary data provided in assignment two. So what's in assignment two is you're gonna use that for the estimate for the application. Does everyone see that? You're gonna use assignment two for the application. And I tell you how much they make each payroll, and you know how many times they're paid a year.
Then the assignment has the actual.
And then this, exactly. This is the actual. Okay? All right, so I will see you on Thursday. If you want to do a review, please come prepared to ask me what you want to work on. Okay? One more time. Oh, the audit test, thank you.
So the earnings per pay period would be the best place to get the estimate from?